let's dive in. Self-love. There's really what I like to categorize as five kind of major pieces of self-love. Number one is paying attention to yourself. So we'll dive into this in just a minute, but I want to kind of get through these. So paying attention to yourself, or being aware, being self-aware about how you interact in your environment and how you feel in your environment. Not leaving yourself as an afterthought. So you should not be your own afterthought. And this is oftentimes, those of you who are moms, 99% of the time, I'm going to put a little star by this one, because most of you moms are guilty of this component of being an afterthought for yourself and your contentions to try to take care of everyone else. So boundaries is another one that we see very commonly. Boundaries, not setting them clearly, not having adequate boundaries, and that could be in relationships, that could be in a number of different things, boundaries for self-care. So very, very important, again, setting boundaries. And then surrounding yourself with the right people. So this goes back to what I was talking about here, surrounding yourself with others who are good for you. Very important to not have people around you who are pulling you down. Short story. I learned from one of my mentors very early on in life that people are a lot like crabs. Well, not all people, but many people are like crabs. When they see you get ahead, when they see you advance, when they see your health improving, just like crabs in the bucket. If you've ever been crabbing, when I was a kid, we used to crabbing off the pier in Galveston. And so as we were holding these, we'd tie a rope to a chicken leg, and you put it in the water, and the crabs would bite on it, and you'd lift the crab and you'd put it in your bucket. And, over a couple of hours, you'd have 15, 20 crabs in that bucket. And what would happen always is that one of those crabs would start trying to make its way to the top, right? Try to start crawling out of the bucket, so to speak. And what would happen every time, you never had to put a lid on your crab bucket, because all the other crabs would see the one crab making it, breaking for the top, and they would all do their best to keep that crab pulled down and pulled in. And you probably have people in your life that are those proverbial crabs, right? The crabs in the bucket. So again, thinking about who those are and making sure that you're not surrounding yourself by the big crabs, right? And then number 5 on this list is the power of forgiving yourself, or self-forgiveness. So we're going to go through these tonight because in honor of Valentine's Day, many of you getting ready to take care of others, getting ready to celebrate love as a whole. I think the most important love we can celebrate is being in love with ourselves, because it's very, very, philosophically speaking, it's hard to know how to love someone else when you don't know how to love yourself first. Self-love is not selfish. Self-love is the number one most important priority for you to take care of yourself. So these 5 things: paying attention to yourself, don't be your own afterthought, establishing boundaries for what you will do, surrounding yourself with others who are good for you, not crabs, and then the power of self-forgiveness, all very important for tonight's theme. So I'd like to just poll the audience here. How many of you in the audience have failed? And let's just kind of, if you failed at one of these, just type that number in if you failed at one of these areas. And by addressing that area, had a profound shift in health improvements. So if you noticed a profound shift in your health improvements by addressing one of these, just type that number in and let us know. Share that with the audience and share it with me. Okay, so let's talk about number 1. So paying attention to yourself. What does this really mean? This is, you hear this word a lot, mindfulness. Mindfulness, we could put one in the L in there, we could put a dash in there. Mindfulness is just being aware of what's going on around you and what's going on with you in the moment. And a lot of people are so preoccupied with worrying about the future or thinking about the past that there's no mindfulness of the present. And so when you're doing something like eating, for example, and you're not in that moment, then you're not aware of how that food might affect the way that you feel, might affect the way that you think. When you're in a conversation with somebody, you're not maybe fully aware and in tune with the way that conversation is going and how it's making you feel. So being mindfulness about what you're eating, right? is one aspect. About what you're thinking is another aspect. Generally speaking, what you're doing, right? We just put that word here. Mindfulness about what you're doing helps you to get feedback from your body. Remember, the feedback from your body is the mindfulness. It is the being aware. It is the first form of self-love, is paying attention to how the environment around you is impacting you in a good or a bad way, and try to move yourself in a good direction instead of keeping yourself in a place that has the potential to deteriorate your health. I've seen this happen for so many people. I see it happen in their relationships where they're not mindfulness of how another person drives them into an anxiety, or drives them into a state of fight or flight. And so they stay there in that relationship that may not be the best relationship. Again, whether that relationship is with with a friend, or whether that relationship is with a spouse. And this is not me telling all of you go get divorced. This is just me saying be mindful of your relationships and the things around you, so that you can maximize that self-love and express it fully and feel good about expressing it and not feeling bad about it. So your self-care should come first. So number 2, don't be an afterthought. Don't be your own afterthought. So this is self-care. What do I mean by self-care? A lot of you think that it's noble, somehow noble, to sacrifice your own health in your endeavor to take care of those around you. And I get it, especially from moms. Moms are generally not self-serving and self-sacrificing. They'll drive themselves into the ground to take care of their kids. And then what ends up happening, and I want you to think about this really carefully if you're a mom and you're doing this, is when you self-sacrifice. So when you offer yourself up, what you're really doing is you're teaching your children poor self-love techniques. They remember that how children learn. Most children are especially young children, between the ages of infancy and somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 years of age, they're like soaking up information intuitively from the environment. They have different brainwave states where they can take in vast quantities of information and intuitively process it. Their brains work differently. And so kids do learn by watching you do. And so if you are here self-sacrificing, what you're actually doing subconsciously is teaching your children that it's okay to damage yourself and sacrifice yourself for the love of someone else. It's the perfect way to establish in their mind a pattern of creating a relationship, with a boyfriend, with a girlfriend, a potential future spouse, etc., that allows them to put themselves in harm's way in the name of sacrifice. So you've got to keep that in mind, because this is something as our culture and our society over the last many years, many decades, it's oftentimes thought that if you take care of yourself first, that you're somehow selfish. But I would argue that if you don't take care of yourself first, you're teaching those around you self-sacrifice, which is the opposite of love, right? The opposite of love is damaging yourself to take care of another. Now, it's another matter altogether if you're taking care of another and you're not damaging yourself. This is not me saying don't help take care of others. This is just me saying, don't put yourself last. You've all heard the old cliche, put your mask on first when you're in the airplane, like put your mask on so that you can continue to function, so that then you could help others. Well, it's no different at home. And if your mask isn't on, and what should your mask be? So if we're talking about self-care, what does that really look like for you in a day? Self-care, what should we prioritize? What should be the primary, if you will? Well, number 1 is your food. Number 2 is your exercise. Number 3 should be your sleep. And number 4 really should be your stress management, like how you're dealing and coping with stress and how much you put on your plate. So like all these things you will lead, especially if you're a mom, you will lead by example, right? And so doing these things first, what happens for a lot of people when they develop chronic illness is these things are the first to go. And when they go, so too does your health. Your health goes along with it. And so food, exercise, sleep, and stress management are critical. So not only should you prioritize these things, and you should prioritize them the same way look, again, I keep going back to moms and kids because that's the commonality, but even this is true for dads, right? You should prioritize the things in your life that matter the most to keeping you healthy, so that one, you can set the example, two, that you're taking care of yourself, you're loving yourself, but three, when you're healthy, you can take care of others better. And so if you're not healthy, again, the aspect is, how well are you actually going to be able to take care of others' needs if you can't take care of your own? So this is a very, very important part. Your care should not be the afterthought. It certainly should not be the afterthought after you're taking care of others, and then you don't even get to these things. So like if you are spending most of your day taking care of somebody else, and then you don't even get to, so instead of having time to prep your food, you're driving through McDonald's. Instead of exercising, you're just not doing it. Instead of sleeping, you're going to bed at 1 a.m. and getting by on 5 hours instead of the necessary quantity. And all these three things, when you fail these three, when these three go, remember what that does. These three compile and they create chemical, physical, and emotional stressors that then you have to deal with. Because again, those stressors destroy your health. And then you're not taking care of those around you very well when you're not healthy yourself. So again, you should not be the afterthought. Hey, don't forget to check out the rest of the series right here. Make sure you hit subscribe below. And as always, thanks for tuning in.